Jessica Kellgren-Fozard, thank you so much for joining us on Divided. And thanks too to Ruth Ann, who's sitting over my shoulder here, interpreting for you, using sign-supported English, SSE, for this interview.
I'm Jessica, I'm a deaf YouTuber, and I make very fun videos twice a week.
Ready? Let's go. Wait, first thing, remove hearing aid.
We do various gay things because, you know, everything we do is gay.
Yeah.
Because we're gay.
Where are you going with this?
You've been sent this video to explain the disabled point of view on why the straw ban is a bad thing.
Jessica, for people who don't know you,
Yes.
tell us a bit about yourself.
I make videos that are about disability awareness, chronic illness awareness, also some like fun LGBT stuff with my wife. And a lot of my message is just about taking bad things that have happened in life and learning really positive things from them and taking the positives, seeing how you can turn every situation into a silver lining.
Tell me a little bit about you and your wife and how you got together.
I've actually been on 70 first dates.
Fantastic.
I know.
Picky.
Well, you say picky. It's kind of half and half in that it's very much that difficulty of, hi, this is who I am. I like you like me, wonderful. By the way, I've got this, this, and this, and this is what my life is like, and da, da, da. And that can be quite a lot for
Do you
people.
get that out in the first conversation that you had? Was that a first date
because
kind of milestone for you?
why am I going to waste my time? You know, I think if you go on 5 dates with someone, obviously, first of all, I have to tell them, by the way, I can't really hear you very well. I lip read. You have to look at me. Don't put your hand over your mouth. Let's not be in dark situations. Blah, blah, blah. But if I waited till the 5th date to say, by the way, I also have these other disabilities, and sometimes I paralyze myself, and sometimes I have to use a wheelchair, and sometimes I have to use crutches, and blah, 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 blah. And then they go, oh, well, I can't cope with that ever. Bye. I'm like, well, was my one trip a week ruined? Great.
I mean, you're smiling about that, but that must, I mean, over the course of 70 dates, there must have been times when that was pretty upsetting.
Yeah, but I think I more was just like, well, you're just not the person for me.
Yeah.
Like, fine, my person is still out there. And she very much was. When we first met, on our first date, I also can't drink alcohol, so I would always do this thing where I went to wherever we were meeting first, and I'd get like a virgin margarita. Just be like, I'm cool.
I'd like to say I use the same technique, but that's clearly not true.
But genuinely, the cannot drink thing freaks people out way more than anything else.
Really?
Yes, it's so strange.
Just because it's so socially ingrained in us?
Yeah. I always find that really weird. The first thing, people are like, oh, okay, you're deaf. Yeah, cool. Oh, okay, so you got like chronic fatigue and chronic pain. Yeah, cool, cool. Wait, you don't drink? No, this can't work. I'm like, okay, well. So I was there with my little virgin margarita. And she came in and I saw her and honestly felt that kind of puzzle piece click into place and was like, oh, hi. Oh, you're the one.
It is nice to hear stories like this because, you know, I will include Sky News in this, sometimes the only stories that one hears about disabled people involving disabled people are sad ones.
And it's such a misrepresentation. And it's also very unfair. I think that we need to have more dramas, more news stories, more... I want to see documentaries that have disabled presenters, but the documentary is not about their disability. It's not about anything medical. They're talking about art in the 14th century and just happen to be in a wheelchair, or just happens to be a deaf presenter talking about Picasso. I don't know why this is all art related. Could be other things.
So I was glazing over there. If you said football, I'd have been better. No. Do you feel defined by other people who look at you, who hear your story,
Sure.
and who identify MCTD, HNPP as you first, and then the rest after?
Well, I like the label disabled, and I think that it shouldn't be a label that I should be afraid of wearing. I think that we shouldn't be using disabled like it's some kind of terrible, bad word, because then what are we teaching young people who are disabled and they're growing up and they know that that's them, but they're being told, oh no, that's a bad word, we don't use that, we hush that, we put that one away. And it's like, but that's part of me, that's part of who I am. It should be like, you know what the word disabled means to me? It means that you're a fighter. It means that you struggle every day because of something but you're still here. You're still doing it, and that's amazing. I worked for a local TV channel, and I got some online hate about being not disabled enough, not allowed to call myself disabled because I have invisible disabilities. I have 2 genetic disabilities, and then they lead to living with chronic illness as well. I have, if you want to know
No,
all
absolutely,
about it,
please.
I have a thing called hereditary neuropathy with liability to pressure palsies and mixed connective tissue disorder with associated postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome.
We might use the abbreviations here. Shall we start with the first
Sure,
thing?
sure.
HNPP, hereditary neuropathy with liability to pressure palsy. Now,
Yes.
I understand the words, but put them together and I don't really, so explain that.
So what that means is hereditary means it's inherited. I've got it from my father. It's in my genes. I'm actually missing a gene, which makes me a cool mutant. So I've got some good powers, just waiting for the X-Men to call me up any day now. And what that means is that the myelin sheath that coats your nerves, it's sort of like electrical wire, if you can imagine. So it's got a plastic coating on the outside. Mine's got holes in it, which means that if I put pressure on a nerve, the nerve can either swell and go through that hole, or it can fray underneath the hole, which means that it can then paralyse. So when I was 17, I paralysed both of my arms for a year and a half because I had a crick in my neck. I paralysed my legs numerous times. I've paralysed my feet. And sometimes these can last for a very long time, again, like a year and a half or 2 years, and sometimes it's very brief, like a few days, and also affects the sensation, so I can't like feel the side of my face, that type of thing. And then mixed connective tissue disorder, which affects my soft tissues, so that's all my organs as well as my ligaments, and together they're not great. Like individually, these things, one of them wouldn't have such a big effect on my life, but unfortunately the way that they work together is that because I'm so likely to dislocate things, that then puts an awful lot of pressure on my nerves, which makes the nerve condition worse. So
how do you then live with these conditions on a day-to-day basis?
Oh, well, I suppose, you know...
You seem very positive about it.
Well, yeah, it's just my life, right? Everyone's got a different life. We all have different things that we have to cope with. It's just part of who I am, I suppose. So there are certain things that I have to be very conscious of and aware of. Hot things, cold things, because I can't feel temperature changes. I have to not sit in one place for too long, things like that. But then obviously there are the bigger effects, the symptoms of those disabilities, which are the things that are really have the impact in my life. So I have chronic fatigue because my body is always constantly under a lot of strain, under a lot of pressure, which means that I am very, very tired an awful lot of the time. And I mean, that's not really fair to say. It's not just being tired, it's that kind of physical exhaustion after you've run a marathon where you can't think straight. That's what I have to deal with a lot of the time. And then I've got memory loss, chronic pain, so I take a lot of painkillers to try and ease that off. But it's still always constantly there, it's just at a kind of lesser level. It's like my body is no longer screaming at me, it's just sort of yelling at a low level.
So are these videos then that you produce where you talk about the disabilities and the conditions, I mean, are they cathartic?
The most positive and the most empowering thing is that I can now share with other people who are in the same situation. So I can build a community. That's for me what's really important. In my life, if you take away the internet, I'm incredibly isolated. I don't actually have the opportunity to leave my house very much because I don't have that energy. But the internet means that I'm not isolated and I'm not alone, and I can just talk to hundreds of thousands of other people using my YouTube channel. It feels wonderfully empowering. As a teenager, I was on bed rest for 2 years. I had a lumbar puncture that went wrong and I lost all of the fluid in my brain, and I had to lie in a dark room because sound, light and touch brought me excruciating pain. So for 2 years...
Just any sound, light and touch caused you pain?
Yeah, to the extent that I was lying in my hospital bed, and if someone came and put slight pressure on the bottom of the bed, I would feel that as extreme pain. It was as if someone had hit me over the head with a sledgehammer. And it takes a very long time to build back your spinal fluid. So yeah, it took me 2 years alone in this room pretty much. And now I don't have to be alone. But also at the time I didn't have the wonderful social media that I have now, I didn't have that ability to just go on Instagram or go on Facebook and not be so alone.
Tell us a little bit about what you've described as the soft activism.
So I think it's very important that to have a whole range of activism out there in the world. I think it's important to put on billboards like, some people are gay, get over it. That's the kind of quite out there activism, I would say. It's very in your face and it's quite confronting for people. But then not everyone is going to be reached by that. Not everyone is going to be able to take the message from that. I think it's more important for them to be able to watch a video that they think is going to be about baking, and it is about baking, but also halfway through, like, I get a bit faint and I have to sit down, and then my wife comes and brings me a drink and then I start up again. It's that kind of learning about other people's lives through something in a kind of roundabout way. So like you were saying with a hair tutorial, it's doing my hair and then putting my hearing aids in and normalizing hearing aids so that people don't see them as just, oh, I have clicked on a video to learn about hearing aids and you don't see them any other time.
Do you think that people are just not exposed to enough people with disabilities for them to be more aware? Or do you think that people shut themselves off to it?
The funny thing is, 1/5 of the population has a disability, which is a huge number, right? I think that's the largest minority. However, I think due to recent scope figures, is that half of the British public have no contact with anyone who has a disability and feel like they have nothing in common with them, and say, oh, I wouldn't be able to relate to someone who has a disability. But that's ridiculous, right? So many people who are just left on the outskirts, and people think, oh no, I couldn't connect to them. Why? No, just because the person's in a wheelchair doesn't mean they don't support your favourite football team, and you can't chat about that.
How should we then educate the broader public about the unseen conditions?
Well, I think it's to do with kindness. I don't think it's necessarily saying you need to be educated about invisible disabilities. I think it's you need to be educated about kindness. You need to be able to, when you see someone parking in a disabled space and then getting out of their car and walking into the shop, you need the first thought to not immediately be, oh my God, are they lying? Is that not really their badge? Did they steal that from their grandma? We're all dealing with a range of difficulties in our lives, right? We all have some kind of baggage, whether that be emotional, physical, mental. And I think there just needs to be a level of understanding that everyone's in a different situation. I guess what I do is I do talk about disability and I talk about a range of other things as well. But for me, I don't feel like, oh, disability is everything. I make my life about disability. It doesn't feel like that at all. It's just my life.
Is there, though, a danger in perhaps not letting the situation progress organically and in fact forcing it?
I think positive discrimination has I don't think that's a great term, because again, we're using discrimination and it feels a bit like, wait, who's being discriminated against here? And people just don't realise the amazing things that disabled people can bring to society. It's often thought of as like, disabled people, we'll lump them together. They are this group of dependents and it's society's job to look after them. But that's not in any way true. We don't necessarily understand that if we just allow this group of people to be in our everyday lives, spreading the joy and wonder that they can spread and sharing their unique talents, how much we could benefit.
Isn't there quite a lot, though, for disabled people to be angry about these days in the way in which they've been treated by successive governments, frankly?
I mean, I think definitely there's a lot for all to be angry about when it comes to the government.
Yes.
For sure. I mean, universal credit leaving people a 5-week wait before they get money, and the government just says, oh, you just have to borrow money in that time and go into debt. That's what we advise. How is that acceptable? In no way is it acceptable.
Therefore, that this government, to an extent, has blood in its hands. I hate the phrase, but you know what I'm driving at there, that the actions of this government have led to people's deaths.
Of course. And the real reason for that is that nobody actually asked disabled people. Nobody spoke and talked about it. Why do they have a panel that has able-bodied people on? It's fine to have able-bodied people, but it shouldn't all be.
Focusing on that young boy or girl who just accidentally found your channel, what is the one thing that you would want them to take away from the work that you've produced on YouTube?
I think I'd want them to take away kindness. I think I'd want them to take away that in all situations with other people, I'm going to approach it with kindness. So just consider, I think, consider with kindness. Think about what might be going on in people's lives behind the scenes.